In the newest episode of Oshi no Ko, we get to see some very interesting development and details about our protagonist Aqua Hoshino. In Season 2 Episode 4, Go and Abiko finally come to an agreement to work on the Tokyo Blade script together. Since Go is a skilled scriptwriter and Abiko is the most familiar with her work, together they could create something that flows well as both a stage play while also being faithful to the original manga that Abiko made. It's stated that the script that they made is pretty dependent on the actors, meaning if the actors do a bad job, they'll receive most of the blame for the play being bad. Because of this, the actors of La 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 Theatre are as determined as ever to put one hell of a performance on. During practice, Akane and Aqua are practicing and Aqua's lackluster performance is called out, with the director saying that this situation calls for emotional acting. Like Kana tells Aqua, you can get a lot about an actor from their personality, but Aqua doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve, so it never really comes out during his acting. She instead notes that he just typically mimics behavior that he's seen from other people. Instead, Aqua needs to look within himself and ask himself how he'd react in emotional situations, and the unfortunate example that Kana used was, how would you feel if your mother died? Now, we can't blame Kana for using this example. After all, she doesn't really know Aqua's circumstances, and thought nothing of it. She does also tell Aqua to remember the times that made him happy, because even someone as gloomy as Aqua must have things that made him happy. And so Aqua does just that. He thinks back on moments we've seen where he's felt genuine happiness. Working with everyone from the dating show, spending time with Akane, connecting to Kana, watching Komachi B perform and seeing his sister thrive as an idol. But Aqua won't allow himself to feel that moment of happiness. You see, in Aqua's mind we see a shadowy figure rise behind him bearing a striking resemblance to Aqua's past self, Gorou Amamiya, the doctor who helped Ai during her pregnancy. In the scene, Gorou is telling Aqua that he can't be happy and that he doesn't have the right to be so, causing Aqua to fall to the ground, hacking and coughing, causing the other actors to worry. Aqua walks out to have some time to himself as Akane gathers that he was having a panic attack. Now, what exactly am I here to talk about? Well, reincarnation and how that affects someone's psyche. I suspect we'll never get a full in-depth explanation as to how reincarnation works in Oshi no Ko, because that's simply not the focus of the show. So I think it's fun to ponder on these things that will realistically never be explained by the source material itself. In the show, we know of two characters who are confirmed to be reincarnations of other people. Aqua Hoshino being the reincarnation of Gorou Amamiya, who was murdered by Ai's stalker by being pushed off of a cliff, and Ruby Hoshino, who is the reincarnation of Sarina, a young girl who died in Gorou's hospital. Ruby's reincarnation isn't too important to this current topic, so we'll be focusing on Gorou and Aqua. From the very beginning of the show, Aqua is always shown to be more mature for his age, mainly due to him having the memories and knowledge of a 30-year-old man. There never seemed to be any divide between Aqua and Gorou, they felt one and the same. However, at the end of the day, Aquamarine Hoshino is technically his very own person, separate from the doctor called Gorou Amamiya. You see, the human brain is this funny thing called developing as you grow older. Because of this, you become capable of more complex thought and your body begins to change. Not only that, but people are shaped by their upbringing, their personal experiences, and so on. As Aqua grows older, he's still affected by these changes in his mind and in his body. They're not really something that you can just resist, and these are things like changes in hormones. While Gorou's memories are still there, an entirely new person is technically developing within him, Aqua Hoshino, the son of Ai. I believe that as time went on, the divide between who is Aqua and who is Gorou became clearer. Aqua's personality is vastly different from that of Gorou's, and despite only appearing for a little bit in episode 1, we can gather what kind of person Gorou was. He was generally a compassionate and empathetic man, both traits that Aqua shares, but there is more to Aqua as a character. What is a personality? To put it simply, they're characteristics and behaviors that comprise a person's adjustment to life, being made of someone's interests, their motivations, their values, their abilities, and their emotional patterns, and so forth. A lot goes into your personality, and your personality can and will change and be altered plenty of times throughout your life, as you're exposed to new circumstances and meet new people. But you have to start somewhere, right? Obviously genetics do have a hand to play in your personality. Not to say you'll always end up being exactly like your parents, but it can influence you and give you a basis. There are obviously cases where people are not at all like their parents, whether that's simply from having different growth or simply working to be better than their parents. But yes, genetics can play a part in someone's personality, and obviously, Aqua and Gorou have different parents. Aqua was born to Ai and his mysterious father. Aqua and Gorou are genetically two different people, so Aqua is going to develop differently than Gorou did, because they are physically not the same person. Aqua's development was molded by many different aspects of his life. His genetics from Ai and his father, his first few years being brought up as the child of a famous idol, his mother's murder, and Gotanda's teachings, etc. There's so much more that was put into Aqua's childhood. All of these factors are just some of the many aspects of Aqua's life that shaped the Aqua Hoshino that we currently follow during the story. And I believe that as Aqua grew and gained these new experiences and influences, Aqua and Gorou began to separate. I believe that because Gorou still appears to Aqua as a hazy, shadowy figure, that the divide between them still isn't as clear-cut as it could be, and that the divide could still be more clear. And I think that's exactly what will happen. Aqua needs to learn to move on. Of course, when you watch your own mother be murdered right in front of you at age 3, I imagine moving on isn't something that can be done so easily. It's a haunting trauma that will stick with you for probably your whole life. But I think it's clear that Aqua's character arc over the course of the show is going to be him letting go of Gorou, who he used to be, and fully embracing being Aqua Hoshino, the son of the idol, Ai Hoshino. I believe Aqua himself fully wants to embrace his happiness and move on, but Gorou won't let him embrace that freedom as the vengeful side that still clings on to Aqua. Sigmund Freud suggested that there are 3 main aspects to personality: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the primitive and instinctive desire of the personality. The id is unconscious thought that responds immediately and directly to our needs. He believed that when a baby is born, they're essentially all id and only develop an ego and superego as they grow older. The superego is the moral component of the psyche, comprising of the moral guidelines that we learn as children and helps guide our behavior towards moral righteousness. These values are learned pretty young, and its primary function is to control the id's impulses. Finally, the ego, the mediator between the id and the superego. The ego is the only part of the conscious personality, and it's what we're aware of when we think about who we are and how we typically portray ourselves to others. It's the part of ourselves that we are actively aware exists. The ego's goal is to satisfy the id's desires while taking into account the morality of the superego, trying to fulfill those impulses in a way that's morally acceptable. Now, why am I talking about Sigmund Freud in an Oshi no Ko video? Well, in this example, let's say that the id is Gorou and the ego is Aqua. Freud said that babies are primarily id at birth, which would make sense why the divide between Aqua and Gorou didn't seem to exist when Aqua was that age. However, because Gorou is a reincarnation, I'd say that the superego began developing early for him, comprising of some of the values that Gorou had in his previous life, while the rest would develop as Aqua developed too. Gorou's id is the simple desire to exact revenge on his father, the man who led to his mother's death. Gorou's darkness seems a lot worse than the vengeance we see Aqua actually portray outwardly. This is likely because of the superego's morality being there, and of course, there's the ego, Aqua, trying to satisfy the id's desire in an acceptable way. Of course, it should be known that Freud's aspects of personality are purely theory, and I'm not trying to pass it off as 100% true. I simply thought this was an interesting way to look at it. Going forward, I think we're only going to see that divide between Aqua and Gorou develop as Gorou's darkness gets clearer and clearer in Aqua's mind. Going off script a bit here to say that this is purely my opinion and purely how I perceive the series and my interpretation. And that's what fiction's all about, is people's different perceptions and how they interpret a story. And whether you think I'm looking at this too deeply, or that I'm completely wrong, or if this is all proven wrong by how the manga pans out, I'm not too bothered. This is just fun for me, and I hope you also enjoyed listening to this. If you did get something out of this, that's awesome. If you think I'm stupid for thinking too deeply about Oshi no Ko, that is also fine, I get that. Just be respectful, that's all I'm asking. But if you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more from me, please leave a like and subscribe. The support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you all next time. Cheerio.